Hey, because Pike wanted a proper start to these things, this is the H&P Oddcast with my co-host Pike. Say hi, Pike.
Hey, when I said proper, I also meant professional and not calling me out for that. Yeah, eat shit. Eat a
Okay.
whole bag of dick for that, for
All
that.
right. Well,
Yeah.
the monetization that we have not yet qualified for is now gone because you said a curse word in like the first 5 minutes.
Oh,
So
as if we're doing this for money. As if we are going to get paid by YouTube. At
don't
best,
you
we're gonna
under
have a
don't you understand? There is a hot market for long form reviews of a 30-year-old TV show.
That's great. That's great. I literally just do this to hang out with you, and it's like, ooh, we might make money. It's like I don't give a shit about that part. If I like literally we just do this when we are in the mood, like to talk. Like
That's fair.
God,
That's fair.
like everyone just know if we ever create a Patreon or anything like that, just know we've sold out. And we will accept that proudly.
If
Okay?
we ever
Okay.
if we ever start praising new Star Trek, that's when they'll know we sold out.
No, we've already done that because of lower decks.
Well, apparently
No,
also
no.
Picard season 3 is not bad, but I don't really want to. Like, here's the thing. I saw some of Picard season 3. It's just really
Uh-huh.
sad to me when you see these actors who are, I'm not gonna lie, they're well past, like, it's like watching old people like on it, and you almost feel bad that it's like, wow, I feel like the production company's just kind of using these people. Like,
Just,
they're just so old. I
just
don't know. It's like it's not a bad thing that they're old. Like, you can have like cool, wise, sagacious characters, but man, it's just like when you see all these characters that used to be so like lively and youthful, like older, and I just with no new like younger cast that people care about. It's like, man, Star Trek really has just fallen down. Even if it's like,
yeah.
even if the writing's a little bit better in Picard season 3, I like watch it and it's like it
Well,
looks like it's like you're watching a zombie.
it's the same thing we've seen for like the last decade or so, where it's like, oh, this new abrasive thing that, they're like, oh, we're gonna swing right at what you like, and that gets shot down. It's like, oh, you just want the old stuff. It's like, no, I want something new that treats the old with respect. And it's like, there's no finding that middle ground for like. Listen. My opinion is just let Star Trek lie dead for a couple decades, then bring back a new thing where it's like a new like how TNG did for it's like like 2 decades
Yeah,
later they finally make a new show after those successful movies and such. It's like yeah, like do something where it progresses the timeline to something unfamiliar, because TNG is like its time is far different from the original series. Like do that, and it's like okay, now let's say we have to deal with these new problems in the future because that TNG deals with problems that are different from the original series. So it's like
yeah.
how yeah, like just move on. Don't set it during the original series. Don't set it during TNG. Do not have like at most you know how in the first episode TNG they had what's his name? Doctor from TOS, McCoy.
Yeah.
They had McCoy actually come on. He's like he's a very old man there. It's like, oh, he's definitely one of those where it's like, man, you are taking advantage of that life extending technology, huh, buddy?
Oh yeah,
I
I
was
think he's
like,
like 127 or something at that point, and it's very clearly like silly makeup. I remember like even thinking that was a very weird scene because it has like nothing to do with the rest of the episode or the rest of the
it's very
two-parter.
much
Yeah,
well,
it's like they're trying to transition people
well,
into this new Star Trek. So they're like, "Hey, like, see, it's the same universe. Like, we were referencing the older people." And I'm like, "Yeah, but man, like, this scene feels really out of left field."
and to be fair, like the entire first episode is like disjointed just because it's like you have the Q plot line, but then the Far Point Station plot line, which are just kind of haphazardly fused together, and it ends on the trial wasn't actually completed, which later on they completed that at the end of TNG, but with the implication like the trial has always been happening, but it's still like eh like not great as a first episode to set a mood. It would have been better if it was like if the Q thing was like later on and it's like, hey, this is an ongoing thing that we now we introduce here, and then from now on, Q will show up and be like, "Yep, this is a new thing with Q. He's
Yeah.
putting us on trial again or something."
Well, so weirdly enough, and to kind of segue back to DS9, because one of the things I think is sort of a problem with a lot of new media is they're always trying to deconstruct and break down something that people
Hmm.
love, and what they're building back is not very good. However, that's almost exactly what DS9 is. DS9 is a very strong breakdown of the traditional Star Trek format. It sort of paints the Federation as not just morally good. It presents a lot of like more questionable moral stuff in regards to how the Federation operates and how other factions look at the Federation.
Hmm.
And you know, it does a lot of these things, and I mean, but what it builds back is better than kind of what it deconstructed. So
Hmm.
it's like, yeah, nowadays when you see people trying to deconstruct, we're trying to deconstruct a genre, or deconstruct a sort of a franchise. It's like, okay, but you don't understand what made that franchise good, and you don't understand how to make something better. Whereas with
Hmm.
DS9, they very clearly knew about, they very clearly understood Star Trek. They very clearly knew that they could build something at least like equal, if not better.
Hmm.
And what you like, I mean, we talked about it when we talked about the first episode. Cisco is not what you would think about when you traditionally thought of a Star Trek Federation captain, because
Hmm.
he was a little bit more morally dubious. He was a little bit more willing to get his hands dirty with certain things, and that makes him a lot more compelling to me, at least. And I think I don't think they could do that nowadays and do it right. They'd make a captain that's morally dubious, and you begin, it wouldn't be done very well, and you begin questioning how good is Federation training here, because this person is clearly unqualified for what they're doing.
I think that's something that was brought up with oh, what's it called? Um, the
Discovery,
one with yeah, Discovery. If I recall, that was like
STD.
a big. God.
Have you not heard
uh,
that?
no, I hadn't heard that before. I didn't
Yeah,
even realize.
that's
Listen,
exclusively
it's like,
how it's referred to now. It's Star Trek. It's Star Trek Discovery, or it's STD.
yeah. Well, listen, I'm not a purveyor of the shit acronyms like South Harmon Institute of Technology. Okay, like, come on. Um,
Well, yeah,
but listen, it's just like it's one of those things like, oh, so in the case of cis, like you basically need to introduce that moral dubiousness later on. Like basically, you have this like what is a regular cast, and then later on, like, oh, as new trials and such emerge. But if I recall, like STD has an issue of like, yeah, kind of everyone is just all the like very quickly goes like all of them like lose their morals and just come off as unlikable towards each other and towards the show and towards the audience. And it's like,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
like DS9
just.
never loses that aspirational aspect that Star Trek was always supposed to have, which
Hmm.
is like, oh, this is the great future. It says like, look, while the future is phenomenal and amazing, there are still going to be challenges that are not great, and it wears that on its face. Whereas I would say TNG kind of like tries to obfuscate some of the issues, you know, but DS9 sort of embraces some of those things. They talk about how a lot of the aliens or other like factions within the setting are not happy about the growth of the Federation because it kind of means the destruction of their own organizations or their own cultures. And it's just like, yeah, that's kind of a natural thing that would happen with the Federation as it continued to expand. You can't push an ideology onto a galaxy and expect everyone to like it, even if that ideology is good from our perspective. Right? Yeah,
Hmm.
like we want everyone to have their basic needs accounted for and everyone to be able to like achieve their full self actualization. Yeah, I mean, like on paper that sounds great, but when you sort of force it onto these other factions, or when you push it onto these other factions very like insistently, it's like, oh well, it doesn't seem as good anymore. But that's a
Well,
conversation that's a little bit more uh, like, I think we would
more
talk
just
about it
like
more when
common.
it's more relevant to the episode. I think it would probably be the
Okay.
time we want to talk about that, because
Hmm.
this episode starts off. This episode is it's a little bit more. It has two plot lines, so it has the A and B plot line. Which one would you say is
Hmm.
the A plot line? The Kira one?
Yeah, the Kira one is like the one that has the more like, oh, dramatic feel to it. Like
Yeah,
it's more
but
dramatic, high stakes.
yeah, but both
While
are
the
given about
other
the same
one,
amount of time. So,
yeah, like basically, I would say like just by this one's more dramatic. The Kira line plot A, but if you're more interested in plot B, that is fine. I perfectly get it. Both are fine.
I mean,
It's a
I'm
little
really into
weird
plot B.
that it's kind of weird that they are together in this one episode. I guess the idea like that connects them is the idea of like land development slash resource extraction because do you remember how the B plot resolves?
Yes.
Uh yeah, so it's like, oh, that's resolved like the good of like hey, we're able to finally solve this issue by, selling selling out basically. But on the other hand, the Kira line is like, yeah, this is the other side of this sort of thing of like, the personal loss and like
Yeah.
the desire to not lose what you have, which, me from Tennessee looks at the TVA. It's like, I'm glad to have electricity, but God, I hate you sometimes. God, I
Well,
hate you, TVA.
I also think we should probably try a slightly different format. How about what do you think about just talking about like first the B plot and then the A plot, like instead of jumping back and forth?
Yeah, I would really prefer that because that would be easier to deal with. Of just like, the continuity of thought because they
Yeah.
don't really interact. So
Yeah,
it's like
if they
we can keep
interacted
them
more,
separate.
some of the A and B plots have interacted a little bit more. So there's an element of like we do have to kind of discuss both at the same time, if you sort of want to follow the narrative. But in this way, it's like yeah, these are two entirely incidental plots.
Yeah.
So we start
Uh.
off with Jake and Nog playing cards,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to see like because they're playing with like a human playing cards, which is weird because I guess that's just like Nog is learning a different game that Jake's introducing him to, as opposed to
Yeah.
playing with the because like the Ferengi, their cards are like weird octagon shapes or something like that, even for like their other games.
No,
But the
no. What they look like is they're circular, and whenever I see them, I just think of drink coasters.
yeah,
As
I
like
mean that's what they
the
kind of look like. They look like someone like redesigned a drink coaster and used that as a prop.
which makes so much sense if like if it wasn't the standard, instead this was like Quark was cheap and just redid his drink coasters to substitute. Like, oh
Yeah.
god.
So Jake and Nog are just sort of playing. Let's see, I gotta get to the VLC controls. They're just sort of playing their game, and they're listening to Quark and Rom have this argument. I think it's Rom. He doesn't talk at all, and his face is kind of in shadow, so it could be a different Ferengi, but I think it's Rom.
Mm.
And
Uh,
Quark is basically criticizing him, saying like, "Oh, you screwed up an order, and now you just got like 5,000 rapages of Yammic sauce," which we learned from like so Yammic sauce changes a few times throughout the series, but it's mostly like something that the Cardassians like to consume. So it
it's
makes
always a Kardashian thing. It's basically the equivalent of I've heard like production staff said like yeah, it's like the equivalent of ketchup for them, and there's an equivalent to mustard in terms of like oh you prefer one or the
yeah, it's
other.
like a weird like sauce that you pour on food. I always like yeah, but like it's very liquidy. But anyway, so they do mention that like they're the only ones who can stomach this swill, and they don't actually mention no, like they do. It's Cardassian Yammic sauce, and they yeah, so
Yeah.
only they're the ones who can consume it, and that means like oh, this is a really dumb order that you got. However,
Mhm.
while Jake is not like at all interested in like what's going on, Nog is like, wait a minute, that's a lot of Yammic sauce. Like, hold on.
Yeah.
And Jake's like, hey, are you gonna play or not? And then Nog is like, in his own little world, he's like, it would be a shame to let it all go to waste. And Jake's like, yeah, that's it, game over. And Nog suddenly's like, I'm getting the tingle in the lobes. And when a lobe tingles, it means only one thing: opportunity. So,
Yep.
like, their goal is essentially to steal this Yammic sauce from Quark, because I guess it's just going to be thrown in some back storage thing, and then
Yeah, because there's no Kardashians.
yeah, and try and sell this for about 4 or 5 bars of gold pressed latinum. And
Yep.
well, so Jake asks like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "I'm talking about latinum." And Jake's like, "I thought you were talking about Yammic sauce." It's like, "You have a lot to learn about opportunity, Jake." So, I mean, it's fairly funny, but it's kind of nice because we're seeing some of the potential for Nog. Because
Hmm.
I don't know if we've really gotten much from Nog other than like a few incidental scenes he has with Jake, where they're nice scenes. But this is sort of his first like showing that he's actually fairly competent, unlike his father at this
Hmm.
point in time. So let's see what's the next scene that we got from them, because it's a little bit trying to see here.
Uh,
Oh yeah,
so
so the
the
next scene we have is like Cork is busy like dealing with some Dabo players and Dabo girls, and Nog kind of just like sneaks up behind him, and he's like, "Hey, I was trying to find some storage space. Would it be
you
okay
went
if
too
I
far
moved?"
ahead. You
Oh, we
went too
went.
far ahead.
My bad.
So it's first they go basically apparently they had gone the idea like look for someone to sell to and such. But Promenade upper level they're looking for someone. Jake's like there he is. They go down to this alien and he's a captain of this freighter of a Deception cargo
Yeah.
ship uh and they ask like confirm it, don't ever just go into your pitch, people, when you're selling, confirm who the fuck you're talking to. And and he says that's right, I'm the captain, and like you do a lot of training with the Cardassians, and he's like why not. They pay their bills, and basically that's what he likes about them. And what uh basically they go into the pitch of like uh you know we're selling 5,000 replicas of Yamexaw, not replicated, all original, which for like let's like even if there is no tangible difference between replicated and original food, there's a difference if it makes sense of like like
Well,
what
yeah,
feels
kind
better
of.
to have.
I mean, I guess that's a
Right.
conversation we can kind of have, because this series does that as like a almost a new element of the setting. So TNG was just like, yeah, replicators are 100% as good as the original. The only difference is you can't replicate living things. So,
Hmm.
for example, Worf didn't like using the replicators because, if you want to eat Gok, you have to eat it live, and replicators can't make live things. So,
Yeah.
that sort of makes sense. However, like for everything else, they kind of make the point that yeah, like the replicators are 100% good at making anything else. Now, they maybe say something along the lines of like, if you ask for chocolate cake, it's always going to give you the same slice of chocolate cake. Uh, but there's no reason you couldn't theoretically like program variety into it. Like, oh yeah, like chocolate cake with extra sugar, or chocolate cake with extra milk in the cooking, and then it would replicate that. But you would need to program that in, essentially.
You So two things here. You don't have the inherent randomness of the cooking process, which, can screw something up, but can also make something great, right? And two, it's sort of like the JC Penney problem. So JC Penney's, right?
Yeah.
You've been to one. So I think like a decade and a half ago, they had a guy come in and he basically said like, "Listen, I've got a better idea for getting people to buy our stuff. Instead of like do doing these deals where we have a markup and then we give you a deal that probably brings it closer to what we sold it for, we're just going to give you like the flat price where above what we would sell it for, but where we make profit. It's like right there, not like basically much more like up and up front about like this is how much we need to sell it for to actually make a profit, which would be the actual previous discounted price. And the idea would be like, hey, what you see is what you get. This is the actual value of it. That shit sucked ass for their JC Penney's. Not because people took advantage of it, but people fucking hated it because there's even if you're getting screwed, there's something to be said about the illusion of finding a great deal, and it's
Well,
sort of
yeah,
the same issue.
there's also the element of like if you're what you pay for something is sort of what you value it at. So
Hmm.
if something is cheap, you sort of view it as cheap. There's like an instinctual thing almost where it's like the more expensive something is, the more valuable you think it's supposed to be, even if that's not really the case.
Hmm.
So when you sell like, oh yeah, you could buy this chair for like $50, or you could buy the same chair for like $70, you might think the $70 one is better somehow because they're somehow selling it for more. But I get what you're saying for that
It's
other thing. I think
it's not that it's like it's this is normally 70, but I got that lucky deal, like
no,
I
yeah, there's
found
that
that.
there's that too, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
the that
yeah, I
mhm.
guess like what I would say for the replicators though, you could program variability in there, right? You could, in theory, say like, yeah, when you ask for a slice of chocolate cake, it generates it with within this range of sugar, within this range of milk, within this range of chocolate richness, right? So it would randomize numbers between that, and you would get something slightly different. You could program that theoretically.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to say is like in DS9, they start really pushing the idea that replicated food actually tastes more bland. Like
Uh.
they actually have a point later on in the series where people like eating like Cisco's cooking more because it's like, oh, you could taste the real richness of the flavors. And
Mm-hmm.
like people are like, yeah, replicator food is so bland now. I'm like, so was it always bland, or were you just saying that because let's be fair, if you ever want a character to have like cooking as a trait, it doesn't really make sense when replicators exist.
Yeah,
um
so another issue that would come up is he does a lot of cooking with like basically it's like this. Every apple you eat has a story, right? Different stuff has affected it, and it's not just down to like, oh, just how much sugar and such. It's like, oh, there might be like something special about the ground it was grown in, that sort of thing. It's like finding like like the computer cannot replicate that. It's like every like how many times did you stir it? How long did you leave it to really simmer? It's just a flat, oh, it's brought out, right? You know, it's the way he cooks it is what gives it value. And it also applies to his dad's business
I mean,
because
like sure, you could say that's how it is, but that's not how it's presented in TNG a lot of times, which is what I'm pointing out. Like
mm,
TNG really sort of expressed the idea that like, yeah, this is the best thing ever. Everyone loved it. No one cooked in TNG, right?
mm,
But throughout like Star Trek, for some reason they had this like need to make people cook more. They had Neelix and Voyager. Like, yeah, we need someone to be
mm-hmm.
a chef. I'm like, okay, I guess that somehow saves power. I don't think it would, but they say it does. And here they're like, yeah,
uh
food from replicators is more bland. I'm like, I don't remember that ever really being that much of a thing in TNG, but if you say it is, I guess it is now. Like, you know, again, I'm not against the idea. I think it does add a little bit of world building. Replicators being this incredibly useful tool, but not a be all end all of food.
hmm
So, but it's just like that's not how it's really presented in TNG. In TNG, it's presented as like, yeah, everyone just gets food from replicators. That's all you ever would want.
hmm
Other than, of course, if you
uh
want living things from specific like cultures.
yeah, so uh it yeah, no, if I recall, that is the point they make. Like replicators, they're fine if you're regularly supplied, right? Because you have energy to back it up. But the thing is when you're in a survival situation, and if the power ever goes off, cool, there goes your food. Like it's one of those things. Like you need prepared like basically food and storage for the journey in case
Well, yeah, you
something
get
goes
like
wrong.
rations. Yeah.
Like, and that's why they set up the hydroponic farm. It's like, oh, basically, it's like they're going like there's going to be times where like power is low and you need to use what you've stored up
All right. Well,
instead.
that's the Voyager. There's a lot to discuss about Voyager if we ever get that far. But yeah. Anyway, um, so yeah, so Nog gets his captain. You were explaining the captain, and he trades the Yamic sauce for another sort of series long meme, which is the self sealing stem bolts. Uh,
Yeah, he says he's like, he doesn't have the
Platinum.
bars for it. Yeah, he doesn't have the bars for it, and he's like, well, I've got these 100 gross of selling stem bowls, but Jordan ordered them from me, and it's like basically it's bartering. This is bartering, people. If anyone ever asks you like, what am I supposed to do without money? Barter, just fucking barter. Like, but uh basically Jake goes for it. Jake's like Nog is initially like, we only deal with money, but Jake's like, no,
We'll
we should
take it.
do like, yeah, we can't do anything with Yamexog stem, which are only for Cardassians. Well, stem bowls, they don't know what they are, but they sound like, I'll be honest, if I was in this situation, I'd rather take the stem bowls, which sound like they can be used in other things, like by other people, than just the Cardassian. It's like, yeah, that's a better deal. And plus, you have a lead right now of, oh, this Bajoran ordered them for me. He can't pay. It's like, oh, so what you're like, trade for the symbols, and as they do later on, they're going to then like try and get paid from the guy, right? And
Yeah, and
that's a path you can follow.
they don't mention it, but in theory, like if you couldn't sell the stem bolts, you could always like break them down into the raw material and probably sell that. I mean, like I don't know what they're made of, but if they're made of some sort of material, you could be like, yeah, we're just going to sell the raw material or something like that. So,
Hmm
you could in theory do that, but that's something that we see throughout the series. There's always like this mention of, oh, well, we have a bunch of self sealing stem bolts, but no one knows really what they do, and they're never explained to us. They're just
So
like they're
that
self sealing.
that's that starts here, and I think I know why it's said, but we'll get to it here in a minute. So, anyways, Jake asked, like, well, Nog first asked, like, okay, what are we going to do with 100 gross of, self-centering stem balls? Jake brings up the very question: how the fuck are they going to get the Yamek sauce? Because it's like they didn't actually have possession of the sauce yet, and that's when we get to the conversation you skipped to, where
Yeah.
um they're in the bar.
Where Nog steals from Quark by saying like, "Hey, I need to move some stuff around. Can I move the Yamek sauce to this like hangar?" And Quark, who still doesn't really care about the Yamek sauce, is like, "Don't talk to me about it. Just do what you want." And Nog is like, "Yeah, sure, I'm going to do that. I'll take it to the matter reclamation units or something like that."
Yeah, yeah. So he first asked, like, "Oh, is it okay if I stack them on top of the Yamexon?" And Quark himself is like, "Don't talk to me about it." And he's like, "Oh, do you want me to get rid of it?" Basically, he just says anything, get out. I'm like, that's technically not sealing. That it's like he said do whatever. And it's like, yeah, yeah,
True,
yeah.
true. He
Like,
did kind of like throw this away, but I kind of feel like if Quark knew what was going on, he would not have been happy with this. That being said,
well,
yeah. So
it clears out his storage space. It's still like
true, true, and
uh
it's not like he's going to be able to get rid of it. But it's just like what we know how this ends is like I always like to think that Quark has some sort of like caveat at the end, but we'll get to that where it's like, wait a minute, you made all these deals using my Yamek sauce. I want a cut of what you make. Like,
Well, that's what they do. That's basically implied to be what they do. Like, well, it's not him being angry. It's like, oh, well, I can arrange the meeting with the buyer. And it's like, but
yeah,
I will say there is a nice thing here where like Quark is getting frustrated. He's angry. He's dealing with that. He's dealing with his bar, and he kind of snapped at Nog with all this. But he does take a moment to say, like, Nog, you're a good boy. Like, before sending him off, like, softens his voice and is like kind of kind to it, as kind as a Ferengi can be, as
yeah.
kind as a Ferengi. And it's like,
Well,
no, yeah, like Nog is his soft spot and will always be his soft spot.
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's
like,
how it is.
family's his soft spot. I mean, like, as much as he yells at Rom, like, he doesn't fire Rom. Rom screws up a lot, but, he keeps him around. And so, like we always know that, like, again, Quark's soft spot is family. That's his weakness, And, uh, it's not, I do like that you brought that up because I did miss that. But it's like, yeah, he does sort of, like, pause, say, like, you're a good kid, and sends him off. And then we cut to, for them, we cut to, let's see, yeah, they're in the
Cargo
cargo
bay.
bay looking at all their stem bolts. Uh, and I do like the line. It's like Jake's like, so that's a stem bolt, and Nog's like, no, it's a self-sealing stem bolt. There's a difference.
You're
And
sure
again,
about that?
that's just the joke of like, what do these do? It's like I don't really know, but they're top grade merchandise according to the captain. You can't get a
Uh,
better stem bolt in this sector.
it's just like symbols are just a thing that we actually have in the real world, but actually self-sealing, because it's like a
What is a stem?
symbol. It's basically a thing to like it's basically a screw. Like, you know how bolts work, right? It's like, yeah, but
Uh,
they seal themselves, and
I
it's
guess
like
I guess if it's I guess like that would be I don't know, maybe so it doesn't have like wear and tear so nothing can get inside like the mechanism would be like what I imagine.
pretty much, I guess it's like, so like it's a bolt, so I just
I'm trying
assume
to like see
like
if I can get like
it's.
a picture of them cuz like
I guess
they're
the idea might be of like, oh, maybe this introduces some sort of consistency in bolting of like, oh, you don't have to worry so like, because every job you do like in production, you want to automate it enough to where it's like, yeah, you have a consistent style of like
oh yeah.
consistent quality.
Well,
So
especially
it's
in
like,
space.
oh yeah, absolutely in space. So it's probably a case of like it just based like the self-sealing part, as long as you apply it correctly, it will do the rest just fine. So sort of like how went from individual craftsmen to proper like a guild setup, and then to assembly line, to what we have now with robots coming in to
Mhm.
manufacturing. Is like, by making it more consistent, you make it cheaper to do, and you make it like safer to do, like and safer to use. Um,
Mhm.
of course, there's other issues with that of automation, but that's not what we're here to argue.
Well,
Uh,
and it's funny that we're getting a little pedantic about this because there's a funny scene with O'Brien because O'Brien comes
Yeah.
in and he's kind of like annoyed, like, hey, I read on my pad that all this merchandise just got moved here. We're kind of getting tired of your uncle bypassing import procedures and all these things. And at one point, Nog's like, yeah, these are just some stem bolts that we have. And O'Brien's like, they're self-sealing stem bolts. What does your uncle need them for? And Nog's just like, the usual. And O'Brien's like, the usual? He's like, yeah, what does anyone need self-sealing stem bolts for? And O'Brien's like, I wouldn't know. I never used them. Let's be fair. The mechanic wizard is like, I don't know what they're used for. So no
Yeah,
one
I
knows
feel
what they're
like
used
he's
for.
no, no, no. I think this is O'Brien is always smarter than people give him credit for. They think he's just like he's just enlisted inside, but he's the chief, and he's the chief for a reason. He is street smart. Of just like he's basically like this is a common thing of like pretend you don't know what you're talking about to get the other person to talk about what they know,
Yeah, that's
right?
what I do all the
Of like
time.
yes, you do. And it's like usually they'll walk themselves into a confession of some kind of like something they should
Well, no,
know or
I will say it's kind of funny because like at one point Jake's like, "How did you know they were self-sealing stem bolts?" And he's like, "Well, I read it here on the manifest." Like,
yeah.
so
It's like
I actually do think I don't know if O'Brien really knows what these are for. He's just like, "Yeah, I read it on here. They're self-sealing stem bolts. What are they for?" It's like, I mean, I guess they're if you need stem bolts, these ones seal themselves. I suppose. I don't.
no, no, no. Plausible deniability. He was trying to figure out like what is Cork doing with the. Do the boys know anything? Okay, they don't know
I
anything.
mean,
I
that's
shouldn't.
fair.
But
That'd be an interesting interpretation, but I don't know. I guess like on the other end of that, I don't know if O'Brien's like manipulative about what he does. Again, he's a very straightforward guy most of the time. So if it was another character, I might
yeah,
think they're trying to get around it. But
this
here it's just like I don't know. He's pretty genuine and straightforward.
uh yeah, but remember he did at one point get picked for a certain mission that we won't talk about right now. But far in the future during a certain war, remember he has to
Yeah,
infiltrate. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, he can do it, and it's like he might just be like the fact of like, oh, these were done without the proper import procedures and such, which, to be fair, aren't Quark's fault. It's Nog and Jake and this captain's fault because they didn't, you know. But it's very much just like he's trying to figure it out, and like he's doing a simple ruse, very simple, pretend you don't know, and then when asked for like, oh, wait, how did you know? It's like, oh, I just wrote about him on the manifest pack. That's that's a very believable thing. I'm like, oh, he didn't know, but he wrote about them on the pack, right?
I'm sending you like the still I have right now on the screen because I know you can't see it, and I just got the most goblin picture for Nog.
A normal, it's a normal noggin day.
I like just look at him. I don't think there's ever been like a more evil look for him. He just like I
He's
can't even
bringing
tell.
out that early seasons TNG from you right now. Like, ah,
Yeah, this
just
is when
you remember?
he's like trying to. It looks like he's trying to like he's lying about the stem bolts right now. He's like, oh, they're just stem bolts. Like this is the start of that conversation. So he's very much like trying to manipulate O'Brien in that matter. But yeah, and then this is where they get the idea to reach out towards the Bajoran who was supposed to get these stem bolts. Uh, let's see
Yeah,
here. So let's get to that next scene because Jake's the one. So they're both there, and they finally reach the guy. And let's see, his name is Chano. He's like, "Look, I can't see you because they're apparently hiding their faces. Again, they're kids, so they probably don't want to be detected." And they
yeah,
say that they're part of the No J Consortium. I guess that's their business name now. Um,
yeah. It's a cover thing. Yeah,
yeah, and they're trying to sell these stem bolts, and they're like, "Look, we want to sell them for 5 bars of gold pressed latinum." Uh, Chano's like, "Look, I don't have the money," and Nog's like, "All right, 4 bars." And Chano's like, "Look, I don't have it."
Mm.
Nog just keeps going down. Eventually, he goes down to like 1 bar. He's like, "Look, I just want to get rid of these bolts." And he's
yeah,
like, "Look, I don't have the latinum." And Jake's just like, "All right, what do you wanna? What do you want? Are you interested in trading?" Again, Nog's not really happy about the trading, and the guy's like, "I have a piece of land." And Jake's like, "Your
yeah.
land is good." And Nog's like, "What is it for? It's nothing but dirt."
Which
Uh,
I just want to slap the shit out of Nog for that one. It's like land is always good, people. If you can get land, you have control over physical space. Even like, listen. There's some worthless land. Don't get me wrong, but most land has some sort of use to somebody. You just have to find it and sell it to them. And like, even if it's just to build a house, like, fucking do it. Like, land is great. Like, land it's like this. Stem bolts, okay. you got like these two do not have a ship to move symbols, right? So they're not only at the mercy of the marketplace, but they have to. They're also at the mercy of finding someone to transport the fuckers, right? That's a whole like land. On the other hand, you want it because it's right there. Like, okay, you only had to deal with the market, much simpler. Like,
Oh
land
yeah.
is great.
Well, in all fairness, I don't
Hmm.
know how. I mean, obviously, yeah, land is good. In a sci-fi setting, maybe a little bit less so, but it would still be super valuable. Like, so this should sort of almost be the equivalent of like when America was first being settled. You can get a lot of land for very cheap because we just have nothing but land, right?
Hmm.
And like in sci-fi, in a lot of these settings, when we see like them go to colonies or something, it's literally like one small colony on an entire planet, right?
Now it'll take
So I'd
a couple
imagine
decades,
no,
a couple
well,
centuries
even
to.
more than decades probably for some of these places, but it depends on what their colonies for. But it's just with so many planets available, land could be something that's just like not the most. Again, it depends on where the planet I suppose is, but
Hmm.
yeah, maybe land is really just something that's like yeah, it's not like super valuable. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like there's essentially like near infinite land, although they're very inconsistent with that. And also, they use a Bajoran measurement for this. I tried to look up if there was any reference to it. I can't find anything. They're trading it for 7 tessipates of land. I tried to see how
Anticipate,
much that
anticipate.
was because it sounds big. I don't know if it's the
Uh,
equivalent of an acre, but like, because 7 acres would not really be that much for, I suppose, in
yeah,
space. But
but I'm trying. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. The fact it's on the capital of the Bajoran people, and like, oh,
is it?
they're trying to. Yeah, that's pretty much the implication of like it's on Bajor itself.
Oh yeah, that would be
Uh,
very valuable. Holy crap!
yeah, it's on the capital. It's like it's one now. It's high risk because it's Bajor. Because
True.
like when we get to the end of this, like the end of this season, start of next season, everyone, you'll see what we mean. Actually, no, even for a little bit afterward, because eventually they had to elect a new first minister, and oh boy, briefly risk some stuff. But like this is land on planet, and you don't have to find an M class planet. You don't have to terraform. It's like yeah, it is already livable. Slash, it might be valuable to some sort of project on the planet. Hint, hint. So
Yeah,
it's like
but
yeah,
it's interesting because like I guess I find it a little bit weird that Nog doesn't really value land, but maybe that's I don't know how the Ferengi necessarily view that, and maybe he's just tired of trading stuff because he's like first we had Yamok sauce, then we had stem bolts, now we have tessipates of land, but
he's
no profit.
impatient. He's impatient. He doesn't see the like. There's not a clear like step forward. While Jake is showing like the proper initiative. Like he's like that frontier spirit of like he wants to go out. Which that's sort of the Federation. They don't care about money so much. They're willing to go for a goal. Now the goal here, make money, right? But Jake is willing to go on the adventure to find the money, right?
I
Well,
suppose I think it's also just more in the sense of like the more you keep trading this stuff for, like
mhm.
the more I guess like the bigger the question becomes of like are we ever going to actually make profit with this? Because stem bolts you could hold those on I suppose forever and move them around. I guess like maybe in this context stem
So
bolts are a little bit more valuable. Because like we know that like random chance is what allows them to sell the land in the end. But like
so between so here's the thing. On the station, you have to pay the storage fee, and you have to deal with import export duties, that sort of thing. Um, and then
that's true.
what if the station comes under attack, right? Now and if it's destroyed, it's like cool, your symbols are gone. Now on planet, uh it's it's stuck there. Technically, you probably have a land tax of some kind, unless you just hide who the fuck owns it, right? And they can't come after you. But uh, after that, it's like there's the risk of civil fallout, right? Which as I mentioned, that comes up, but the land will still be there. And then it's like, okay, what if Bajor is attacked by outside force? And it's like, well, we do know for a fact later on there are things that can destroy planets. Now, it's not like a super weapon, but it's a case of like, if you do certain stupid things, it will destroy whole planets, right? And it's like that's a risk, but that's less likely to happen than this space station, which is at this trade intersect, like this major trade intersection, effectively the Singapore or the Suez or the Panama of space. It's like, yeah, that's more likely to come under attack than Bajor itself, because as they say, like Bajor is a backwater and it's been like just pumped out of all of its resources, or like a lot of its resources, and that's why they're colonizing, right? It's like the station is more likely to be a target for violence from outside forces. So it's like, yeah, the
Sure.
more secure thing is the land. The more secure thing is the land, and probably
Probably.
you're only dealing with technically a land tax compared to an import export duty, and then the storage fee, all that, right?
Yeah, and I guess like
And
other than, yeah. I mean, it's a little like that. I mean, again, this is all like made up numbers. How much is like a wrapping of Yemek sauce? Well, we're not really told. How much are all these stem bolts? Well, we don't really know what stem bolts are for. How much land is this? We don't know. So, I mean, they're very clearly playing around with this is hot potato, market hot potato, where
yeah.
you're trying to not be the one holding the bag in the end. So like they eventually like get this land, and then we get to, I think it is their final scene, so we're at the end of this plot line.
I looked up Tessapates, and like I looked at images. The first image that came up is what I just sent you.
Oh god, let's see if I can like I
It's
don't know if I'll
so.
be able to put that on screen. um it's just a
Uh,
it's the meme from Hank from Breaking Bad, the happy sad one, where one of them is just 100 self-sealing stem bolts and the other is some dirt on Bajor. Oh god.
Mm.
But
That's pretty good.
it's pretty funny. But we get to the final scene, and they're playing. Jake and Nog are playing cards again, and Nog's not happy because all he wants is the latinum, and all they have is dirt. And Jake's like, "How many times do I have to tell you? It's not dirt, it's land." Uh, and Nog is just like, "What are we supposed to do with it?" And Jake's like, "Sell it." And Nog's like, "To who?" Which is funny because he's like, "Look, we got to sell it." It's like that's what we had to do for the last thing we had. So it's like, "Oh, you've almost not made any progress." But so they're kind of arguing, and then you see Quark and Odo come down, and let's see. Da-da-da. So they're asking about like something called the No J Consortium. There's apparently the government officials were contacted this morning. They want to build a reclamation facility on a strip of land owned by 4 different people, and unfortunately, the only people who have not they've not been able to contact to sell is the No J Consortium. And Odo assumed that was somehow related to Quark because everything that no one can track is somehow related to Quark. And Quark is just like, no, someone has seemed to fail to include me in this odd endeavor. And it's
Yeah.
funny because you see like Jake and Nog kind of in the background watching the whole time, like, oh my god, we got this.
Mm.
This is our moment. So Odo leaves, and like Quark is kind of like trying to figure out like what's going on. He's like trying to snoop. He's like, who's these No J Consortium guys? And Nog kind of pops up right behind him and says, "Hey, Uncle, I have some opportunity for you. I have a
Mhm.
business opportunity that might interest you." And Quark sort of like turns around and goes, "Wait a minute." And he like points at both of them, and he's just like, "Nog." He's
No,
actually like quite
Jay.
proud.
Yeah, and like he like this is like, oh, this might be Nog's first like real business deal, or like the first big one he does. It's like, and the fact of like, oh, now he can like get profit from technically the Amex through Nog and Jay, because he's gonna arrange it, and I'm sure Nog will know like, I should probably pay a little bit. Like he won't like Quark won't have to be mean about it. Like Nog will know like you pay up a little bit
Oh well, Quark will
extra.
probably be like, "Yeah, the finder's fee's like 3 bars, and they'll negotiate." I'm sure Quark will get something out of it. But
Oh yeah.
again, because his nephew's a soft spot of his, he might be like, "All right, just give me 1 bar, you can keep the other 4," and something like that. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a nice little ending. Although I will point out, there's like one weird scene where they have like where Quark's on the computer. You can kind of, it's hard to tell maybe on the capture, but he's sort of like standing in the foreground, like very close to the camera, and it's very blurry
Hmm.
around him. So I actually think that maybe the actor wasn't there for this scene. Like maybe just scheduling made it an issue, and he almost looks like he's green screened in because they have like Nog and Jake far in the background, Quark's in the foreground, and there's like this blur around him. And then when they cut to Quark again, they don't show Nog and Jake; they just show Quark from a different angle. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost 100% convinced they had to like film these on maybe like 2 separate days because they like maybe
Mm-hmm.
some sort of scheduling issue. But yeah, so that was the first time we found what's it called, like the stream of commerce. What's the thing does the Ferengi have? They have the ethereal stream of commerce or something like that.
No, 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 no. It's the Great River of Commerce, I believe.
I was
It's
close.
the Great Material Continuum, the Great River, or the Great Continuum. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's like
It's,
the first time that Naga was able to do it. Although he wasn't able to do it without Jake's help, which is also kind of nice. And yeah, it's a nice little side plot. Two characters. I think both of the characters are acting pretty well. They show like an interesting friendship dynamic, but also like, hey, they're fighting over certain business transactions.
hmm
Uh, and yeah, I mean, I think it's a nice little B plot. I'll say this: I like it better than the A plot because the A plot has a little bit of weird stuff in it.
Yeah.
I guess we'll start getting to that, but yeah, B plot's pretty good. I'm fairly happy with it. All
Yeah,
right,
it's a good
and
one.
yeah, and now we rewind all the way back to the beginning. Doo doo doo. Uh, so we learn that. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to see here. So Bajor is about to do a large-scale energy transfer by tapping the molten core of their fifth moon, Gerardo, and yeah. So apparently they're trying to move all the people who are on that moon off because doing this is basically going to destroy the whole moon, or basically make it uninhabitable.
Yeah.
Um, and let's see, they're like, oh yeah, like we'll be able to generate a lot of energy, a lot of power, and we just got to like move these people up there. They're basically like buying up their land. Let's see.
Eminent domain. Eminent domain.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're counting on its energy to heat a few 100,000 Bajoran homes this winter. Uh, let's see. I'm trying to think of like what is because like Cisco's more or less like, we don't like surprises here, so let's just make sure that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. Let's see. And then we have a like I don't know how much this guy's really in the episode. I think that might be his only scene because he's the Turan is his name. He's kind of organizing the whole
Uh,
project.
no, he shows up elsewhere. Recall. It's like later on when they first come back to the station. Are like, hey, this is a thing. Like if I recall, yeah, yeah, he shows up later. Of like he's basically representing the Bajoran government, and he's the one who basically later on claims like, oh, um, you're too connected to this. You're letting your emotions get in the way. And Kira takes offense. Takes offense.
Yeah.
As
Well,
Kira does.
we then have a funny scene. Dax and Kira are basically doing a final inspection of the moon, and they're having some sort of conversation where apparently Morn was hitting on Dax, and Kira's just like, "Oh my god, this is hilarious." Uh, so she's like, "Yeah," like
hmm
Dax is just like, "Yeah, Morn invited me over for dinner," uh, and Dax is like, "Yeah, I don't know. Those 7 or 8 little wiry hairs that come out of his forehead are kind of cute." And she's like, "What?"
Mm,
And Kira's just like, "What?" Like it's funny because I don't know if Dax is actually serious about that or if she's just screwing around.
now, with what we remember. So remember, there's the episode where they will think Morn died, and pretty much everyone's genuine there, and like Dax is genuine. Like, yeah, like Morn was a player. He
True,
was
and
a
Dax has
real
Dax has very interesting tastes. I think at one point they
yeah.
mentioned like they always have these like comments where she was dating some sort of weird alien. She's like, "Yeah, I was dating this guy," and Kira's like, "How could you do that? He has see-through skin." And she's like, "Some people can see past the skin, Kira." Like as if it's like
I
that's
don't like
not the
to see
issue
his
here.
brain. No,
I
no.
don't
So it's
like
not
I don't
Caesar skin as a whole. It's just the like head. Like it's just
Oh,
like
that's
the
right.
like
I think it was just the
yeah,
head.
and like yeah. Which is so weird. I'm like, why would you evolve this? Why?
Maybe they just lacked pigmentation. Who knows? But anyway, so they do a scan of the moon and they find out, hey, there's still some people on there and they should have been evacuated by now. So let's go down and make sure that everything makes sense because something's up. Kira goes down, and she finds like sort of an entire group of people that are like, oh yeah, they walk up to her with like farming tools pointed at her, and that's where we get sort of the opening scene, the opening of the show. And let's see, yep, it's revealed that there's the guy Mullibok. He's their leader.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, yep, sorry, these people they don't like uniforms. Uh, and let's see, Kira's like, oh, does that mean I can come in? Like, because clearly, you're telling these guys to sit down. He's like, no, I don't like uniforms either. Uh, we've had our fill of uniformed bullies, which that Kira takes quick offense to that. 'Cause he's like, look, I'm not a Cardassian. By the way, you're not supposed to be on this moon right now. We're going to start tapping the core any day now. And he's like, yeah, but unfortunately, I got to finish my harvest, and I'm not leaving. And Kira's like, excuse me, you do realize that like this is happening no matter what. So if you don't leave, you're gonna die. He's like, okay, whatever. Uh,
If I die, I die. At least I don't lose my life. This is a very like me. Like I said earlier about the TVA. It's like, yeah, yeah. This is a very TVA sort of feel. Just like, listen, it's eminent domain. You need to leave. We're gonna flood the whole valley. And it's like, no, it's my land. And it's like,
well, it's also funny because
yep.
this guy's being very obtuse intentionally because she's like, look, we gotta go. You were obviously overlooked in the general evacuation, but let's get you out here now. And he's like, we'll talk about this over supper. Come on in.
Hmm.
And she's just
Yep.
like,
Here we
Kira's
go.
just like, what the heck is going on here? Well, who is this guy? What is he doing? Um, and they show the natural farming lifestyle of these people. Let's see. Oh, he's like, oh, you're not the type that disposes a man on an empty stomach. And Kira's like, yeah, I wouldn't think about it. Uh, let's see here. I'm trying to. Oh yeah, this is where Kira's like, look, there's going to be a bit of a delay. These people just want to have like a farewell supper. I'll have one of the thermologists bring me back. So basically, Kira's staying there while Dax heads back, and Kira's like, look, I got to get these people off the planet, but they're clearly like having some sort of issue not leaving. I'm trying to see like where it is they sort of explain. Da, da, da. Oh yeah, so like Kira asks why these other people don't talk, and it's not just because they probably didn't want to give him speaking lines. He's like, look, the Cardassians took care of that. They don't speak anymore. We all came to this moon 18 years ago to escape the Cardassians. We it was tough. It was tough, but we all survived by working together, and they tamed the land, sort of deal,
Hmm.
real frontierman sort of deal. And
Yeah.
Kira's like, and now Kira's kind of realizing, oh, and you guys don't want to leave because we're taking this land from you, basically. Let's see. Kira's like,
This
look,
land is my land. This land is
Mullibuk's like,
my
look, they
land.
begin tapping the core of this moon in 7 days. Mullibuk's just, I know. And she's like, look, you're only 3 people. This project's going to benefit thousands, hundreds of thousands. And he's like, look, I've made myself unconcerned with that 40 years ago when I ran away from the Cardassian labor camp on your precious Bajor. This is where I live. This is my home. I'm not leaving it. My life's here. I'd rather die here than leave. So
Hmm. Hmm.
Kira's like, okay, I can't just like have this guy die. Like I have to somehow like convince him to leave. And
Yeah.
let's see, they have like a nice little supper where they sort of swap stories. Uh, let's see, they're talking about. I'm trying to see like. Oh yeah, Mullibok talks about how he overpowered the Cardassian crew somehow. He's like, I don't even know how I did it now, but I did it, and I took a ship and I ran away. Uh, let's see. And Kira talks about they're basically exchanging some war stories. Uh,
Hmm.
and this is where it's like, oh, look at aren't they really nice? And then Kira kind of has to bring up again. It's like, so you know, you got to leave. And this is where Mullibok kind of then draws a comparison between her and the Cardassians again, which she's not very happy of. Uh, it's like we fought against the Cardassians even though it was helpless. It's like we're gonna stay here. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
let's see. Da, da, da. And then like he asks her like, why do you think we beat the Cardassians even though they were stronger than us? And she's like, well, because we fought like fanatics. And he's like, yep, like fanatics. I'm gonna remember that. I gotta remember that. And that's where Kira has this like moment where she's like, he is not gonna be convinced. There is nothing that can convince this guy.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's we're kind of brushing over it a little bit here, but a lot of this is very well acted. There's a lot of really good dialogue, and it's like, do you remember how I mentioned in the previous or in Battle Lines how, despite the fact that it was Kai Opaka's first scene with Kira, I felt there was this very big history between them, and they had done a
Yeah.
very good job at sort of establishing that, like, even though we've never seen these characters together, the way they act around each other, I feel like they've met each other. That same thing happens here. Is obviously this is the first time Kira's meeting this guy, but in just their third scene, they're having this like really nice conversation. It's very believable. It's very nice, and I will be 100% honest. I've never been super like uh I'm not a super big fan of a lot of the Bajoran plot lines. This kind of being one of them, but it's still incredibly good. I can't deny that. Even if it's like, I'd rather be watching Nog and Jake do funny market shenanigans. But it's like this is still very well acted and very well done.
Yeah.
And let's see. I think like part of my issue is like we're kind of seeing it a little bit now. Mullibok is incredibly obtuse to the point where like it doesn't really feel like there's a dialogue. It feels like he's not even engaging in it. And maybe that's intentional, but it's this
Yeah.
idea of like we're not leaving. It's like, okay, but like you're gonna die. It's like, oh well. I'm like, okay, but we got to get you to leave. It's like, but I'm not gonna. And that's kind of what a lot of these conversations circle around. It's done
Hmm.
well, but it's also like, okay, Mullibok, I need you to not be an idiot right now. I want you to actually have like a dialogue and a conversation. Maybe like explain a little bit more about how like you think that this is not necessary or something, right? It's like, but there's not really any sort of moral discussion to be had. There's really just more Mullibok doesn't want to engage, and Kira's constantly trying to engage him in this discussion.
Hmm.
And part of this ends with him saying like, "Look, uh, the Cardassians probably told you that you didn't stand a chance either. Did you surrender?" Kira says no, and he's like, "Why would you expect me to act any different than you? You tell them they can start cracking this moon apart whenever they're ready. I'll be here." And I'm sitting here like, "No, you won't." Depending on what they're doing to crack this moon, bro, you're gonna be like evaporated.
Well, he probably does know it, but he's like, I don't. This is my land. Like I'm,
I know, but it's
like,
like, I mean, like, I guess I get the metaphor, right? I'm fighting for what I believe in, just like you fought for what you believe in. At the same time,
hmm.
this is not like Kira grabbing a knife and charging like 30 Cardassians with blasters or phasers pointed at her. Like this is like I'm gonna fight for what I believe in, sir. They're firing it like a death laser from the sky to crack open the core. I can fight it. I can take it. I'm built different. I'm gonna fight like hell. It's like no, you're not. You're dead instantaneously.
You're gonna die.
I think like because
You,
I think like what he's kind of hoping for is as long as he's here, they won't actually do it.
yeah,
I think
but
that's kind of what they're
yeah.
going across. Like, you're not just gonna kill a man, right? And it's like, but that doesn't really come across that way. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
so yeah, it's a little weird, and there's like this awkwardness to like their interactions that I mean, it feels believable, but at the same time, it's very like odd. And you were right, Torin does
Yeah.
come back because Kira has to return to the station and explain. Uh, It's like there were 47 people on the, or Torin says like, look, there were 47 people on that moon who left willingly. Why can't you get this guy to remove? And she's like, look, I don't know. All I know is that they obeyed the. All I know is that the 47 obeyed the order to leave. This guy did not. And they're like, look, why can't you convince him? It's like you haven't met him. And I'm trying to like, let's see, summarize what's going on here. Cisco is kind of playing the mediator here because Torin is like, yeah, this is my project. I want it done. Kira's like, well, we have to be considerate of these people. And Cisco's like, look, we just need to solve this problem. Can we postpone the moon cracking? Torin's like, look, we can't postpone it. Like, if he stays there, he's committing suicide. We'll have to beam him off to the surface. And Kira's like, look, if you do that, we'll be killing him too. And I guess that's the implication that he'll kill himself if he's taken away from
Mm,
this place.
the implication is sort of like, oh, like, yeah, basically it's like, oh, he's not like it's basically case like you have these authorities coming in just telling you like, listen, you need to uproot. I don't care like if this is your homestead, you've built this. This is gonna become like a whatever we have planned. And you need to just accept that and deal with it. And it's like, oh, well, that's great. I've built my entire like I've built my entire life here and now I'm losing all of that. It's very much like
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because like even Torn's like, look, we're just gonna have to remove them. It's like I wish we had time to be more delicate, but we don't. And then Kira's like, look, instead we're gonna act like Cardassians, and that's
Yeah.
when Cisco has to like stand in and is like, yeah, he kind of realizes that Kira's emotionally invested here. Torn's like, look, I resent that. That's incredibly cruel. Uh, let's see. If you're not comfortable completing the assignment, I'll find someone else who is. And Kira's like, fine, that won't be necessary. I'll get him off the planet.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's like obviously the theme of this is the real life examples like you mentioned with eminent domain. Let's say like a city wants to build a highway and they need to buy your property and you refuse to move. It's like, okay, like there is an element of the greater good, like, but there is also an
mhm.
element of like, yeah, but this is my personal property. I'm not just giving it to you. Um, I mean, I guess like the idea here I find a little bit more. I guess like I don't know because it's obviously taking an entire like planetoid object, right? So it's a moon.
Mhm.
And are we
Mhm.
saying that like nothing can be done with this moon because this one guy refuses to move? It's a
I
little out there, but it's also at the same time it's like I don't know if I really support the Bajoran government here. It's like is there really no other project they could do?
well, they need it for those houses to
Yeah.
be heated. It's like without those houses, yeah, they're not gonna like they're like all basically it's like one like three guys on this farm or like
100,000 people.
hundred well no hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
houses which are families and it's like yeah like that like so there could be anywhere from one to let's say a reasonable like four. It's like yeah that like I'm yeah it's very much this
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean
the same logic. It's the same
it
logic
sucks
that went into the
there's not a good
CBA.
option. Yeah.
Yeah. uh
And, but it's also like the more thematic elements are the the Bajorans government acting closer to Cardassians. They're not
mhm.
freedom fighters
Not
anymore.
freedom
They're the
fighter.
establishment. We've seen some of this before with
Mhm.
like Kira's plot lines where she realizes she's no longer on the side of the rebels, the underdogs. She's on the government. She's a government officer. So
Mhm.
she's the one who kind of picks on the little guys because that's her job, and the
Yep.
little guys are unfortunately her people. And let's see here. So Kira heads back with some security officers, and let's see. They basically like force some of these people to leave. Let's see. Um, Kira like pulls it, has a phaser, and Mullibok asks if he plan to use that, and Kira's like, "Look, protocol. If you like, I'll help you pack your things." And he's like, "You sent those two uniforms after my friends." She's like, "Yep." And you're here to grab me too. And she's like, "I'm sorry. Don't make me take you by force, please." Let's
Mhm.
see. And then he just ignores her and starts working on his kiln again. He's like, "Nope, I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
working on this. This is my project. I want to finish it." Uh, she says, "Look, I promise. We can plant you. You can plant whatever you want on Bajor. Stay by yourself if you want to. That's fine. Take some seeds with you of those terrible roots of yours that I had to eat. Just listen to reason." And he's like, "Listen to yourself, uh, Major. Tell me what you hear." And he says, like, you sound like a two-headed Malgorian I knew when I was a boy. Uh, you ever try and talk with two-headed Malgorian? And she's like, I don't know what you mean. He's like, it can never figure out what it really wants to do, and that can be very confusing, believe me. So he's pointing out that Kira is obviously very conflicted. She's
Yeah.
basically uprooting. Again, she's the bully in the situation, right? She's the big bad government telling you this is what you're doing. Deal with it. We'll use force if we have to.
Yep.
And that's not the role that she's used to. She's used to being the rebel. She's used to fighting the opposing force as opposed to being that big force.
Almost a hero. It's like, oh, you're not used to having to actually be the bad guy and enforce these laws that are like necessary, but you know, feel unfair.
Yeah,
It's
and then
like,
some of the security guards show up and they're like, "Look, where they try and grab Mullibok, let's see. Oh no, she basically starts to like try and pack things. The security officer's major. That's crazy. This man just. Oh yeah, one of the security guards got struck with a farm tool, and she attacked me from behind as he grabs one of Mullibok's friends. Mullibok fights back. The security guard ends up having to shoot him. I guess with the stun feature, and it hurts him
Yeah.
and he gets knocked out. She tells like, look, beam beam yourself, like she tells the security guard, beam yourself up to the runabout and get Dr. Bashir now to help this guy.
Hmm.
Let's see. So yeah, he got injured, unfortunately. Let's see if I can get
Injury.
in. Let's see. I mean, like, I feel like it would be safer to beam him off the planet to Bashir. Uh, basically, like, instead of taking the runabout, I assume back to DS9, grabbing Bashir, and then coming back here, they could just bring this guy to Bashir, but that would kind of violate the whole purpose if he doesn't want to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, because then it's like, oh, they try to beam him off, and then they have him like on the thing, kicking and screaming, probably hurting himself more. It's like, yeah.
Well, I think he was like unconscious, wasn't he? Because we only see him awake again when Bashir's treating him.
Um,
I'm not sure,
True,
but
but then
it's also just a matter of like, again, I think it kind of ruins the theme elements of here. It's like, oh, we're not taking him away just yet.
like,
If they knock him out and take him, that probably just hurts their chances of actually convincing him.
yeah, well, yeah, like because like I was saying, it's like, oh, if they then got him like if he woke up, it's like cool. They're trying to treat him. He's probably gonna be pissed and
True.
like fight. It's like, yeah, you don't want to deal with that. So
Yeah, and then
yeah, no.
they have Bashir here, and we have what I like to consider probably a small continuity error. He says, "Look, you took a phaser blast which punctured your peritoneum. Peritoneum. He punctured some part of his body, and it's a serious injury that if he tries to move, it'll make it worse. Especially given his age, that's probably an issue. Now, phasers have SETI
Punctured.
like stun and kill,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm assuming it wasn't on kill because he would be dead. Uh,
Yeah.
so that means it was on stun, and it still somehow punctured him.
So it could be a case of due to age and like, the range at which you fired it, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Um,
I just feel like we've seen in the series people use like the stun setting pretty liberally. It's like
I mean,
we point this at you, stun you, and deal with it later. They don't really consider like, in real life, right? Like a stun gun or a
hmm
taser. You know, most of the time those are probably safe, but
yeah,
there is always a chance it causes an issue. So you want to be sort of reserved about using it. How they've sort of shown the stun setting has always been like very liberal about it. Oh, this guy's being difficult, stun him, and then just bring his unconscious body. And it's like, oh, was there any potential for issue? It's like, no, it's a stunner. It's like, okay. I mean, that just seems how it's always been presented. Now they're like,
yeah,
oh no, there's apparently a chance that it could have punctured something if they're over a certain age or if their health is a concern. It's like, oh, I mean, okay, I guess that's a thing now. Maybe these are
yeah.
just those like maybe these are just like cheap Bajoran stunners that aren't very good.
Damn sheep, Bajoran crap. Damn it. Oh
It's like a
Lord.
repurposed Cardassian one that didn't actually have a stun setting, so they had to jury rig a stun setting in there.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Look, we
Uh,
have two settings on our Cardassian stunners. We have one for shooting other Cardassians and one for shooting Bajorans. The one for shooting Bajorans is twice as painful.
oh my God. Anyways, moving on.
Yeah, so Bashir basically heals him up, and let's see. Kira starts like taking care of him after Bashir heads out. He's like, "Look, I've done everything I can. He just needs some rest." And Kira's like, "Look, let's see. I'm trying to see what they're saying here. I was yawning. Sorry. Da-da-da. Yeah, Kira's basically look. I'm gonna stay here, and then she starts working on the furnace because she, I guess, wants to complete it for him. She feels bad that he got injured because of her in a way. Uh,
Hmm.
Bashir returns back to DS9, and he's like, "Look, she didn't offer a word of explanation, sir. She simply removed her uniform and started building." Cisco's kind of realizing it's like, "Oh no, Kira's letting her emotions get in charge of her again, and she's basically gonna start, who knows where her loyalty lies at the moment."
Yeah, she's about to start a war against the government.
And
But
Cisco's like very worried, but he's like, "Look, we still have a few more days before they start cracking the thing, so give her some time." Uh, and yeah, basically he's like, "Look, Cisco's gonna try and give her some time, but he understands the situation. She understands the situation too, but at least he's able to remain emotionally distant from it."
yeah, well, he has a fun little thing of like, like he says like I'm gonna say tell the minister that she's remaining there at your request. But she was like, that isn't true. We'll make it true, doctor. Now, please. And it's like, but you're really like, I should really just go along with this. So like, I advise you stay there for humanitarian reasons, and actually just ask like, how long? And it works. Just like, yep, yep. Use your authority to get your way, the Cisco way.
Yep. And then, we have another scene where Kira's treating Mulibok, and they have a conversation about like this old tree that she apparently had dealt with. Uh, she says like, look, when I was small, I remember that there was this tree right outside my window. It was the ugliest, most gnarled and battered old tree I've ever seen. Even the birds stayed away from it. And Mulibok's like, but you loved it. And she's like, I hated it because it had grown so huge and the branches blotted out the sun for calipates. Again, calipates is mentioned.
Tell
How big was this? How big was this tree? Uh,
I I don't know. Just stop asking like what these numbers means, okay?
and its roots buried themselves so deep in the soil, nothing else could grow there. It was big, selfish, and annoying. And of course, this is basically just a metaphor for the man. And he
Yeah.
asks, "So what happened? Did you cut it down?" She's like, "I don't know yet."
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Cisco gives a call. And says like, "Look, I'm beaming down. We're gonna have a conversation about this." Molobok is like, "Look, this is still my home." He opens the door and says, "What do you want?" And Cisco's like, "Look, I just want to talk to Kira." Let's see. Oh, Molobok's saying like, "Well, she doesn't want to speak to you." So I think Molobok's kind of like, "Kira's on my side now," and she's like, "Look, you don't
Mm.
speak for me." Uh, Cisco's like, they're trying to have a conversation, and Molobok keeps like interfering. It's like, "I don't tell you." Molobok says, "I don't tell you how delighted I am to hear that I am causing you trouble. How many of your Federation uniforms are you planning to send at me? 40? 50?" Cisco's like, "I don't think it's gonna have to come to that."
Mm.
And like Cisco basically is like commenting, he's like, "Look, Kira staying here, she's jeopardizing her career." Um,
Mhm.
let's see, and then da, da, uh, Cisco's like, "Look, I can see that you like him. Uh, we have a material substance report to finish by the end of the week, so you need to come back." And she's like, "Look, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I have to help out here." He's like, "Look, your role in all this is a liaison officer, so you need to be the liaison. You're my major. You can't be doing this." Um,
Mhm.
let's see. And Kira's like, "Look, it's not that simple anymore." Cisco's like, "Look, I'm not saying it's simple. I'm saying it can't wait. Look, I understand you're used to sympathizing with the underdog. You spent your life fighting to overcome impossible odds, just like he's doing. But you have to realize something, Major. You're on the other side now. Pretty uncomfortable, isn't it?" And I mean, there's just a really great scene. She's like on the ground and she's crying, and she's like, "Look, it's awful. It's awful being the bully. It's awful being the person who has to
Yep.
make these hard decisions."
Yeah,
And
like
Cisco's like, "Look,
it's very much in your games, like I know that has been the way with certain Angelo, but like it sucks being evil. It sucks. It's awful being mean. Like just like
no, I
it
mean, I
is
wouldn't say Kira's being
the
evil, but yeah, it's just a matter of like, it's
like
not cut and dry anymore. You know,
yeah.
there's sort of an interesting discussion to kind of be had. Like again, this is sort of so much of what DS9 is like known for. Is it's like, look, the good guys having to make the bad decisions that no one wants them to make. And this isn't like, oh,
Mhm.
isn't there a moral question that we're kind of talking about? It's like, not really. The Federation's kind of the bully here. Federation and the Bajoran government are kind of the bully. Like,
Well, no,
are
it's
they
the
morally
Bajoran
in the right?
government.
Well, the
The
Federation's backing the like. I guess like with Cisco supporting this, like because again, remember the guy's like, "Oh, you're going to send your Federation soldiers?" The Federation is condoning this, at least by proxy. And
mm,
it's like they're being the bullies, and unfortunately, that's kind of what they have to do. That's the nature
mhm,
of governance. That's the nature of like like majority rule, right? It's like, look,
mhm,
I'm
mhm,
sorry, you're just one guy. Um, but yeah, and I can't really oversell. I wish I could show more of it, but it's just Kira, the delivery she gives is so good in this scene. Um, and Cisco gives a really nice speech. Like, Major, when I first met you, I thought you were hostile and arrogant, but I was wrong. Bajor needs you, and I need you. I like you, and I don't want you to be hurt. So as a friend, I think this is the first time they mentioned that he mentions her as a friend. I have to
mhm.
remind you that his fate is already decided. Yours isn't. And Kira says thank you, and he's like, "Look, I'll be in the runabout standing by," and then he beams out. So, we get another
Yep.
scene where it's a really good scene. It's so difficult to sell, but we get a scene where Molobok is apparently like he's sleeping. He's not sleeping very well, so Kira's basically staying up and taking care of him, and he's being a little bit ornery, but uh, it's. I feel like a lot of Kira's storylines have some sort of like father figure in them, and this guy's clearly a
Maddie.
father figure to her.
Yeah, it comes up with just like, yeah, she dealt with the trauma of like having to grow up fast and such, and basically she needs not just she had Alpaca as a mother figure in the one episode with Alpaca as well. It like, but it's yeah, you're right. It's often father figures, but it's very much the case. Like she had to grow up fast, and she's now having to like build up and connect with something like that's normal usually. Of like
Yeah,
it's
and I mean, there's this.
because her. Mhm.
No, well, I was just saying, there's this like scene where she's constantly trying to like dote on him. Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? He's like, no, leave me alone. And she's like, okay. She starts to walk away. And he's like, where are you going? And he's like, look. And she's like, I'm going to go get some sleep. And he's like, no, bring the chair over here. You're my nurse, are you not? Like, it's this nice little scene where she's trying to help him, and he doesn't want her to. He doesn't want her to help him. But when she tries to walk away, he's like, no, you're not leaving. You're staying here and keeping me company.
I don't want to lose my
So
friend.
well, it's like I don't know. It felt like such an almost father daughter situation where the dad doesn't want the daughter to like worry about him, but he doesn't want her to leave. You
Hmm.
know, it's a nice little scene, and again, like I think that's why like this is a very difficult plot line to talk about in part because it's like most of it's in the acting. It's like
Hmm.
when you sort of just lay it out on paper, a lot of it is not going to be not a lot of it is not going to be super great, but uh, you know, in general, it's pretty good. And then we're in the final scene of this episode, like after that, where she wakes up and he's back to working on the furnace, and
Hmm.
uh, I mean, I might just like read part of the scene like out loud. She asks him like, "Hey, any pain?" And he's like, "Yeah, a little sore. I thought you were going to be sleeping all day." And she's like, "Yeah, well, I was taking care of you all night." It's like, I don't recall asking you to do that. I can handle it. Go get something to eat. Uh, and she like walks inside. No, she walks over, grabs the tile, and helps him finish the furnace. Then she goes
Hmm.
inside, grabs her bag, and he's like, "I didn't think I'd ever finish it." And she's like, "Well, it's finished." And he's like, "Nothing to do now, but fire it up." And then Kira comes out with her bags, and he's like, "What's going on here?" It's like, "You finished your work, now I have to finish mine." And he's like, "But you don't want to." And she's like, "I could use a friend on Bajor. I like it to be you." And he's like, "As long as this cottage is standing, I stay here." So Kira then blasts the furnace they just made, destroying it.
Yep.
And then she grabs the fire from it and lights the house on fire. And Molobok is like screaming, "What the hell are you doing?" And he's like, "Look, you chose your uniform." And then it's like when he sees her lighting the house on fire, it's like, "So you chose your uniform over me?" And she's like, "That's not true. The time I spent with you here has meant so much to me, but it's over. It's time we went on with our lives, mine and yours." And he's like, "You say you're my friend. Prove it. Use that weapon on me." And she's like, "I can't." It's like, "If I leave here, I'll die." And she's like, "No, you won't. I won't let you." Two to beam up. And that's the end of the episode. I don't really like this ending. I'll be 100% honest. I get what it's going for, but
Hmm.
I feel with how stubborn and ornery Mullibuk is, he just stands there while she lights his house on fire, and he doesn't even like try and stop her physically.
Yeah.
There's this element of like he's almost like non-committed to doing it. I'm not gonna leave.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, but what if we burn your house down? It's like, oh well, I guess I'll watch you do it. It's like, well, you think that this guy would like immediately be like seeing her like walk over to his house with the torch, he'd be like tackle her to the ground or something. But he kind of
Yeah.
and maybe it's like he understands he can't win this fight, and he was just trying to be a pain in the ass. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a way. Maybe there's a way to read it, but it ends very abruptly, and it's kind of almost like, okay, we said what we needed to say about this plot line, so we kind of need it to end. Let's be fair. It's Star Trek. They're not really able, especially this early on, to make like multi episode plot lines, especially for something like this. This is very much like a this is supposed to be a one and done plot line. So when the episode ends, and we need it to wrap up now. Um, I guess I do like the fact that she let him finish the furnace, but it almost feels spiteful. Hey, I let you finish this furnace, and then I blew it up and teleported you away. It's like, okay. I mean, it wasn't
Hmm.
about him wanting to finish his work, really. It was more like he doesn't want to leave here. If it was about this idea that like he wanted to finish the furnace before he left and she let him do that, that'd be one thing. But that didn't really seem to be the point. So it ends a bit weird. I don't think it ruins the plot line, but it's very abrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, all in all, because I know you got to go here soon, but all in all, I think it's a very good episode. I think we have two pretty decent plot lines. Not amazing, but good character stuff for Kira, good character stuff for Jake and Nog, good character stuff for Cisco, even though he's not in it that much. All in all, it's not a bad episode. I can't. I mean, I can't really
Solid
say there's
B.
any. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd say a very solid B, and I would not say it's skippable, although I don't think it's an essential episode. I think it's like, yeah, it's very good for Kira's character and Nog and Jake's stuff. So good episode, solid B, and yeah, that is it for episode. This is episode 15, I believe. Yes, episode
I
15.
believe. Yeah.
Episode 15. Uh, progress, and
Progress.
I guess the idea is it's progress on Kira's growth. Is that kind of what it's referencing? So
No, it's progress about like development. Well, it could be that too, but it's like like the cost of progress and the
yeah, that's
benefits of
probably. I mean,
progress.
I think that's true. I think it's supposed to be the double meaning, the idea of like the cost of progress, but also the nature, like both like physical progress and the growth of Bajor, but also Kira's progress. This is probably the point where we say she is fully like agreed. Like I am no longer the underdog. I am the boss around here. I am part of the government. I make the rules, but I also have to enforce them against people who might not like me about it. So
Mm-hmm.
all in all, good episode. And I have unfortunately realized a huge problem with this. You haven't changed your PFP from last time.
Oh, did I not? Well,
No,
um,
it's the first time you've had the same PFP twice in a row now. So this is
no,
gonna have
no,
to be
no,
a
no, no, no,
scrapped
no, no, no,
episode.
no, 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 no. Literally last time, it was a completely different one. I'm looking at it right now, motherfucker. You are not gaslighting me about this. You are not gaslighting.
Are
You
you
are not
sure?
gonna go through the. I'm looking at the video now. You're not gonna go back and edit that
Okay.
video. So
Okay.
I'm.
No, I made a mistake. So it's been a while since we recorded one of these, and you've had that PFP since then. So I think I did just forgotten. Not everything's a gaslight, Mike. Gosh, you see threats everywhere. Wow.
Audience, just so you know, this man gaslights me often. And it's like, why you gotta do this to me, man? Why you gotta think this is funny? Why is this a giggle to you?
I
Huh.
don't know.
Let me get you. Just
Anyway,
just cut me off. Cut me off.
I'm not gonna cut you off. I can't do that joke anymore, and honestly, it kind of makes the endings of a lot of these seem like crap. So, we'll see everybody next time. Because next time we're talking about what episode are we talking about next time? We got
Uh
If Wishes Were Horses.
oh,
All
this
right.
one. This is
Anyway, all right.
nothing
Well,
episode.
see you later, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.